Alright guys, we're going to try to figure out how much your arrows deflect whenever you shoot through brush. Seems like a common question that we get, and it's a common scenario we run into all the time.
So we got multiple broadhead types. We've got the single bevels that we generally shoot, and then we also have some mechanical broadheads, various types, and we're just going to test the difference and see what happens.
We're going to set the target up out there and shoot through grass and weeds and stuff, close to the target, far away from the target. Just see what we come up with. We ended up breaking this into 3 different groups. We shot targets between 20 and 25 yards, and we focused on shooting brush right out of the bow. And we shot 3 different thicknesses of stems, basically. So we shot some pretty light, fluffy, grassy, weedy stuff, and then we shot some like middle-sized stems, a little bit heavier brush, that dark green bush right there, actually. And then we shot the woody stuff at the end. We just wanted to know, like, what the heck does this stuff do to your arrow in flight? Because like you said earlier, you can't see any of this with the naked eye. When you're hunting, it's gone.
Right.
And you don't know what the heck even happened.
So the best thing about testing is not to start out with a premise and try to prove it.
Right.
The best thing is sit back, shoot, slow it down, and go, huh. And that's kind of what we found out today, which is, well, the softer stuff did okay.
Yeah, softer stuff did okay, and we shot mechanicals and fixed blades, and most of the mechanicals we shot were rages with the collar, not with the rubber band, and they held up pretty well through that grass and that middle stem size stuff. However, once you got to the thicker stem, that's when things started getting a little wild.
For all the broadheads, though.
For all the broadheads,
right,
including the single bevel.
Right.
But the thing I noticed with the shooting the single bevels through this stuff, especially the light grass, it goes through there like a drill.
Right.
Like it just cuts it all to pieces and just keeps on driving. And that stuff didn't have much of an impact. But once you got to the middle stem size, most of the time it didn't have an impact, but on that last shot you hit the center of the bush and cut it to heck, and you could see the back end of the arrow start to kick out. I guess if there's anything we can conclude from that, as you went up in size and thickness, like by the time we got to that woody stuff, like that is twigs. That's like woody branches that most of us deal with all the time. When you get to that, that's changing things.
Anything surprise you?
I just think that the arrow going this way, even though it's hitting where you're aiming, is interesting. That's something that is hard to factor in the moment from a hunting standpoint. Like if the arrow hits something early off the bow, it kicking off to the side could impact where that arrow is going to go once it hits the animal, which would be hard to predict.
We saw pretty good accuracy.
Yeah,
pretty good accuracy was actually.
Like, we didn't have an
really
arrow just
impressive.
redirect and shoot 4 feet to the right.
No.
And do crazy stuff.
On some of those where they get real wonky and they hit the target, the spot that it hits is where you're aiming. However, the arrow, well, you show the camera. The arrow's not hitting plumb.
It's coming in like this, and what happens is the arrow, the intended impact point is here. The arrow is coming in sideways, hits, and it just keeps going.
It levers.
But the rear end of the arrow's got so much leverage, it can't go forward. It wants to do this, and we saw him wobble. So what's going to do is just kill your penetration. And that was all platforms.
Right.
When the woody stuff was hit and the arrow got real crazy, it would hit and you'd see it really wobble a lot, and that's just going to kill your penetration. And then if you add the animals moving.
The thing that we have noticed, though, in comparison, this test to our real-life experiences.
What lizard? He's distraught.
Oh, yeah, there's a
Sorry.
lizard down there,
Wow.
Greg. Look at that wildlife out here in the rain.
Green and only
He's
down
gone.
there.
He already made it out.
He was
there you
giving it
go.
the
He's all good.
woo, ladies.
Look at him. Look at him full strut in the neck there. It's pretty. See,
He's about to gobble.
We definitely learned some things, but we also can relate a lot of this stuff to our experiences, like you said, with that elk that I lost. Because I always wondered what the heck happened with that. The elk was 10 yards away, and I shot through not a lot of stuff. I mean, but it was woody stuff. It was a cedar bough, like a branch of a cedar tree or whatever. And I remember like looking from Cody's camera angle, or Cody and Tyler's camera angle, that arrow comes in and hits it aside like what you were just saying. Arrow was wonky, so it didn't drive straight through. It hit at an angle and then drove it at an angle, and into the front of his shoulder, which obviously I didn't lose. I lost him.
And that obstruction was closer to the bow than it was to animal.
That was right out of the bow, very similar to what we're dealing with out here today. And that's what that shot, the closest comparison I could think to that is that last shot we took with the single bevel through the woody stuff. where I smoked that woody branch, and it was smaller than my pinky. I mean, the stuff we were shooting at over there is 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch thick. Mm-hmm. But as soon as those arrows hit it, they're kicking.
Right.
Both ways.
Right. Unfortunately, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, especially for what y'all do. Like,
Yeah.
we're kind of cheaters at deer hunting, and we have deer feeders and all that. It's kind of open, right? You kind of got it set up. But for what y'all do, where y'all are constantly dealing, all you public guys and all the Western guys and all that, that stuff's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
you
You shoot through sagebrush and stuff all the time out west.
Or you just don't see it.
Yeah. You don't see it like that buck I shot a couple years ago. I hit one limb that was smaller than the width of that arrow. Mm-hmm. And it redirected that arrow just like that. Except the buck was so close to it that it didn't alter the impact that much. But it did alter it. And then we have examples shooting through soft stuff on at least 2 of the bucks you've shot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was where their body was obscured. Mm-hmm. You couldn't even see it when you shot.
Yeah, just the very top of their back. Just close enough. Now this is the most important thing. The animal was close. They were both inside of 20 yards. The obstruction was way closer to the animal, so the arrow's getting a lot of momentum is my assumption, and that made me feel confident to just punch through that stuff. But that was all like goldenrod, so I'd say that was kind of medium
size.
And then the other stuff was kind of medium as well. It was a little more woody, but very flexible. I don't really know what the plant is, but it's much more flexible than like a stick.
Right.
After seeing today how sometimes it can kick it sideways, that sometimes is worse.
Closer.
Right? Yeah, close.
Yeah, because the arrow doesn't have time to reconnect.
Closer
as soon as
was
it,
terrible.
Yeah, as soon as it hits that woody stuff, and even the middle-sized stuff, right on the other side of that bush, that arrow's like this.
Theoretically, once it's disrupted, I don't think
shouldn't.
it's ever coming back to the best flight you had out of the bow.
Yeah.
I think
that's probably
I'm
right.
not making
based
a
on,
definitive statement here.
Based on what we've talked about with Rocket Man, that makes sense.
Well, from the shots through the medium stuff, we still saw at 20 that the arrow was still
Yep.
a little wobbly, and I don't, just from as much time as I've spent messing around with bear shafts and stuff, I don't believe there's enough correction in the system that if it was 45 yards, that all of a sudden
it's
it would
just
just
gonna go back
miraculously
plumb.
stabilize.
Yeah, it's not.
I think the lesson here is the softer stuff's probably all right. I'm not really sold on whether it matters if you're shooting a mechanical or a fixed blade. We didn't see every mechanical broadhead just go sideways, and everything shot pretty close to point of impact. So that's good.
Yeah.
But heavier stuff's a problem. And I think if we'd have gotten like dead oak, like I'd have dragged an oak, I think it would have been even worse.
Woody stuff is a problem. That's the difference. Like you could shoot through a lot of that grass to the point where I couldn't even see the target.
Yeah, that was intentional.
I'm putting the pin on the middle of the grass and thinking, if the target's over there somewhere, I'm going to hit it somewhere. And it ended up hitting right in the white, but like that was just all luck because I had no idea where it was. I'm just guessing. And it was drove straight in the target on the other side, and Greg could even see some of the flight after it went through on his camera, where it's flying straight.
Right.
I mean, that's the conclusion, is the lighter, fluffier stuff, the grass and the weeds, even the medium-sized stuff, you can get through there with these systems.
Right.
But the heavier stuff, even if there's one, like when I had the Rage on a while ago, Greg, I hit one twig that was 1/8 of an inch in size out of the bow, and that arrow went sideways. I mean, that thing was totally screwed.
And I don't know that that's the broadhead. It could have been the way the broadhead hit the branch.
Could have been. Because I shot a single bevel right before that, and granted, I hit a thicker twig with the single bevel. It did the same thing.
Right.
It just
That's right. So it's just
kicked it.
Arrows aren't that stable in flight. There's nothing holding them on the shot line. So really, the learning lesson here is you're shooting a pretty unstable projectile that wants to disrupt, like it's trying to die.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see that all the broadhead platforms kind of showed the same, as the wood, as the density went up.
Yeah.
It got harder.
It disrupted it.
Yeah, it got
because
way harder.
the stick is the problem.
Yeah. And that's been, in my experience, the problem that you have when you're shooting at animals isn't necessarily the grass, it's twigs.
Yeah. Super stiff stuff, or anything with bark on it.
Yeah,
like
right. Absolutely.
Any
sticks.
Stick is kind of another way to put it. I think
a weed or grass, doable.
And it's soft.
It's soft.
Flimsy.
If it's completely obscuring your view of the target, you don't have anything to aim at. So, if you're shooting through grass or weeds like that, and you can see your target it's not affecting these arrows.
We did notice the closer was really terrible. Like if you were to get up on a deer at like 8 or 10 yards and shoot through some moderately woody stuff, that thing's gonna be.
Yeah, don't think just because he's 8 yards away that you can make it through woody stuff now. No,
I would be
it's
more
gonna turn
prone
it.
to say, even though I said it would be disrupted, I'd rather it be 22 yards out there and say, okay, it's going to be at least more kind of
Yeah,
going
maybe
that
it'll come
way,
back a little bit.
not just completely sideways. It was pretty revealing.
Yeah.
But the one
Learn
thing we
something.
didn't do, and we can maybe ponder this for the future when we get together next time, is shoot different platforms for the center. Shoot a real light arrow, shoot a heavy arrow. Maybe it's because all these arrows
They're
do
heavy
have 100
for
grain
us,
inserts. Probably the lightest arrow you're shooting was 550 because we have 100 grain inserts and everything. But it would have been nice to shoot a standard arrow that's 380 grains and just see. I don't think through the soft stuff it's gonna matter. It wouldn't matter. I don't.
I don't either.
But I don't know.
I don't.
And now I'm like, hey, I want to know. In the defense of everybody, if y'all hit something and y'all bounce, stick one bad, that's gonna happen. It's just gonna happen. It could be any broadhead.
Yep.
You get enough sideways action, it doesn't matter what broadhead you're shooting. You can shoot 700 grains, and if it's flying sideways, it's flying sideways.
Yeah.
There's no forward momentum on that thing. So those things are going to occur. We were all curious about this. We've learned a lot. But the basic premise was just to have everybody say, well, at least somebody showed this. And then you can explain sometimes when you don't get one, you got to go, well, dadgum, Murphy shows up. He's kind of a pain in the neck. It is what it is. And if you think you're going to get them all, you need to start fishing.
Hopefully that helped y'all out a little bit. We definitely learned a lot.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll help you make better shots on deer this next fall.
See you later.